So, as I reviewed the news today, it was striking to me how much Putin is going to hate the shifts in international order that are taking place right now in the last like 24 hours. And I'm not even talking about what's happening with Istanbul. Like, will he or won't he show up in Istanbul and go and attend this meeting with Zelenskyy? Let's start here and we'll just work our way through what's been happening in the news. Lavrov will not represent Russia at talks with Ukraine in Istanbul, according to Russian media. So who will represent them? We don't know. But of course, that's just one source. Another source says some Russian media reports that Lavrov will not represent Russian talks. Others claim that he would. The Russians create a lot of intrigue and show here. Okay, the Kremlin keeps us guessing on whether Putin will attend in person tomorrow in Istanbul. Putin has working meetings planned for tomorrow, says Peskov, in Russia. Thank you very much. Well, so we don't actually know. Maybe Putin will show, but that doesn't tend to be his MO. He doesn't tend to do these surprise things unless they're elaborately staged and within his control. Lula, this is the president of Brazil. I talked about him this morning. Lula said something to the effect of, like, I urge you to go, but that was while he was in Brazil. Well, he got on a plane and took a special flight and landed in Moscow. Earlier, Brazil's Lula stated that he might visit Moscow again to ask Putin personally to take part in the negotiations in Istanbul. Well, apparently he's there. Now, Russia will announce its representatives for the talks in Istanbul this evening. Russia's MP says, or one of the MPs said, he added that Russia might agree to discuss an all-for-all prisoner exchange proposed by President Zelenskyy. But he stressed that Russia intended to try some captured Ukrainian defenders. These are the Azov defenders, to actually try them like here by taking into account the crimes that have been committed, in particular by Azov and others. Yeah, so they actually want to hold trials for them as if they weren't combatants that have certain rights as combatants. So now why would Russia go for an all-for-all exchange? They need the soldiers. Apparently, that could be a consideration. We don't know if anything like that will happen or not, but they're considering it, of course, according to these sources. Meanwhile, Ukraine's spy chief, Kirill Budanov, told Kyiv Post that, quote, neither Putin nor his body double, unquote, is likely to show up at tomorrow's talks in Turkey. Okay, that's a pretty funny line, but I don't think that Putin's going to be there. I could be surprised, and if I am, I'll correct myself. All right. Now, Jane Kyiv posted this. All attempts by U.S. and others to awash in Russian disinformation have given up on pushing the Zelenskyy is a dictator. There's no elections nonsense. Remember how we used to hear that as a refrain? Oh, he won't hold elections. Well, he can't. He's not popular. Turns out upwards of 74% popularity. He's gaining a height. Now, when they said it last time, this was like December, January, this was the height, 39 and 37% saying they don't trust him, or only 52 and 57% saying that they trust him. That's when they were talking about this the most. That's not his all-time high. His all-time low, I should say, all-time low of trust was just before the war at 37%. Then the war broke out, is 90% immediately. So, okay, I don't think that's going to go anywhere, that line of reasoning from the Russians. Okay, now President Zelenskyy is saying Trump needs to believe that Putin actually lies, right? And that's what he needs to reinforce. He talks about he wants peace, but he doesn't want it. Okay, he's got to get that through. And it's a hard thing. Like, Trump is having a hard time breaking through the cognitive dissonance. And we should do our part, sensibly approach this issue to show that it's not us that's slowing down the process, Zelenskyy said. Zelenskyy confirmed that he would travel to Ankara, Turkey on 15 May for a scheduled meeting with President Erdogan, but stated that he would be prepared to travel to Istanbul immediately if Putin appeared there. Quote, if Putin does not arrive and plays games, it's the final point that he does not want to end the war, unquote, Zelenskyy said. So Zelenskyy kind of boxed him into a corner with that. Zelenskyy emphasized that any upcoming peace talks must result in a political victory, such as a ceasefire and the exchange of all prisoners, rather than just discussions. Even if he shows up and he just has discussions and says, well, I get all my 4 territories or I walk away. That's not going to show that he's sincere. Russia continues to voice demands that amount to Ukraine's surrender. All right. Now, how far is it? Ankara is here and Istanbul is here. So, I mean, he could get there fairly quickly if he needed to. All right. Andrei Yermak, head of the Ukrainian presidential office, said, quote, "I can only tell you what I heard from President Trump once." He said, "If Putin refuses to make a peace arrangement or peace agreement, I will give Ukraine more than it can imagine." I like the sentence very much. So far, we haven't seen it. Maybe, Putin not showing up will finally drive home the message to Trump that, Putin really isn't interested. He shared that with Le Monde in response to the question on whether Ukraine expects to receive or buy more weapons from the United States. And so far, it looks like the U.S. is softening and allowing them to at least buy these weapons. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson, this is the next big story, said we didn't have the balls to fully back Ukraine under Biden. I think I can say that, right? I mean, I'm not going to get censored or anything. But that's right. They just were not willing to step up and fully back Ukraine. The former UK Prime Minister slammed the West's half measures, saying that Trump at least sent lethal aid in 2018. Yeah, but it's been a long time since then. Let's get that straight. He warned current peace talks risk ending the war on Putin's terms. That would be a disaster for Ukraine. And he said, quote, "Trump can actually deliver if peace comes through strength," unquote. He can, but that's all theoretical. Trump hasn't, and he hasn't shown that he's willing to do this yet. But this is the direction he should go. Okay, next big story. Representative Don Bacon is slamming the Russians. The Germans uncover a Russian plot to bomb a commercial cargo jet. Again, Putin is a cornered rat. This is from U.S. Representative, a Republican. His name is Don Bacon, who's all in Ukraine's corner. And then so here's the story here. German and Swiss authorities have arrested 3 Ukrainian nationals on suspicion of planning sabotage attacks on behalf of Russian intelligence services. The men allegedly prepared explosives or incendiary packages intended for dispatch from Germany to Ukraine, targeting freight transport systems. So the Russians were using willing or maybe coerced, I don't know, but Ukrainian nationals in order to do this. So the Russians' hand was behind this kind of would-be incident, and it was caught in the nick of time. Germany is increasing its military potential, says Merz. He said, quote, "The German army must become the strongest in Europe. This will be a priority for the government," unquote. He added that there can be no peace settlement in Ukraine dictated by Moscow. Additionally, Merz invited Donald Trump to his historical homeland in the German town of Kallstadt. The grandfather of the U.S. president was born and raised there. That's a clever move. That'll be something that Trump will want to do and spend some time with Merz. And okay. All right, so let's go and look at what's going on in France. Another big story. French intelligence has released data on Russia's large-scale espionage and sabotage activities against France. 16-page report titled "Russian Threats and Actions Against France" refers to cyber attacks, espionage, sabotage, and attempts to influence the political process. Russia is already waging a hybrid war against Europe, against NATO. It's probably testing and looking for weaknesses. French intelligence claims that Russia is helping Iran develop missiles. Remember that Iran-Russia connection is going to become important later on. That could potentially reach France. So Russian spies have targeted scientific institutions dealing with defense technologies, including lasers. Russian officers under diplomatic cover are establishing contacts to gather political information. In 2023 to 2024, Russia hacked several accounts of the French Ministry of Defense. In April of 24, hackers attacked the hydroelectric power plant. The attack was linked to Russian intelligence services. And again, the list goes on and on. Russia is massively spreading fake news, videos, and statements, including artificial intelligence, to discredit France in the international arena. After strikes on Ukraine with the Orishnik missiles, French intelligence believes that the risk of Russia using nuclear weapons is real. Okay, so the French are feeling this hybrid war. The Germans are feeling this hybrid war. President Macron just said that he is ready to start a discussion with the European allies about placing France's nuclear weapons on their territory. Yeah, how about that? So this is not a shift that Putin wants. Just like Germany becoming the strongest army is not a shift that Putin wants. Pentagon does not rule out, this is in the U.S., the Pentagon does not rule out a war between the U.S. and Russia. Huh? Yeah, this was a statement made by General Gregory Geo. The U.S. Department of Defense considers a direct conflict between the United States and Russia possible in the event of an escalation of the war in Ukraine. Now, they don't want that, but they're preparing just in case. Geo's remarks were prepared for a hearing in the Senate Armed Services Committee, where the growing likelihood of conflict with countries like Russia, Iran, China, North Korea were discussed. Same characters keep coming into play each time. Thanks to an investigation, next big story, thanks to an investigation by a number of media outlets from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Europe, a scheme involving the largest channel through which Russia pays for arms deliveries from China, again, has been uncovered. A large-scale criminal network to circumvent anti-Russian sanctions is built around Kyrgyzstan's Capital Bank of Central Asia. With the help of Capital Bank of Central Asia, it carries out payments for weapons that are secretly supplied to the Russian army. The main linking feature in the scheme is the pro-Kremlin oligarch Ilan Shur from Moldova, who is under U.S. sanctions. Till January 2025, the key position in the criminal scheme was held by Kyrgyzstan's Kermet Bank. At the beginning of this year, the United States imposed sanctions on Kermet Bank. Former Kermet officials took key positions in Capital Bank. In addition, the Capital Bank of Central Asia was designated as the sole bank for conducting cross-border ruble operations to and from Russia. An ultimatum was issued to Russia: either cease hostilities or face new sanctions. As long as such channels for bypassing restrictions remain, some of the sanctions imposed by the EU and the U.S. become meaningless. So they're going to work on new sanctions, and they're going to target this kind of thing, and it'll help cripple the trade. Okay. Now, all those things, all those events, this is Russia doing this, Russia doing that, Russia doing this, doing the other thing. Okay, Alexander Dugin, Putin's brain, says war in Ukraine can't be stopped until the power of globalists is totally dismantled in the U.S. and EU. Only then can we reach some positive results, not before. So once all those bad guys over there in Europe and America stop doing, but wait a minute, it was Russia doing all these things in the hybrid warfare. Okay, let's turn to the next big story, because the world is shifting like overnight. It is shifting in a big way with the next three things that you'll see here. U.S. and Saudi Arabia signed what the White House calls the largest defense sales agreement in history. The total value is $142 billion. And Timothy Milovanov says, can Ukraine please do the same? Okay, $142 billion. But at the same time, Saudi Arabia pledged to invest $600 billion in the U.S. So Trump's getting this trade imbalance thing balanced or positive toward the U.S., and he's going to run a victory lap about that. But what's important here is that Saudi Arabia is not Iran. I know MBS. He's not a good guy. The leader in Saudi Arabia that you're dealing with, he killed a journalist. I get it. He's bad, but he's nowhere near as bad as Iran. Iran is the bad guy and the real bad guy in the region, and Iran is pals with Russia, and so the Russia-Iran axis also put its weight all the way into Syria and into Lebanon and was destabilizing the Middle East. This is changing some of that dynamic. It's not the only thing, but $142 billion of U.S. weapons in Saudi, and remember, the Saudis hate Iran and the Iranians hate the Saudis. They're different peoples. They're different sects within Islam, the Sunni and the Shia, and they're different people ethnically, the Arabs as opposed to the Persians, and they make a big deal of this sort of thing. Okay, so while Trump is there, you saw this weird thing happen. A Saudi TV channel edited Trump's video using AI to smooth out his manners. The Al Arabia channel used AI to edit the video of Trump's negotiations with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, that is MBS, that I talked about earlier. In the edited video, Trump is shown drinking coffee offered to him, while in reality he declined to drink it. So, okay, I mean, it's just weird, but you're going to have a hard time. You saw something with your own eyes. Was that AI or was that okay? Now, Trump is also also shifting his course on Saudi nuclear talks, sparking concern in Israel. Israel's like Saudi better than they like Iran, for sure, but they're still a little nervous about Saudi Arabia, and they don't really want to nuclearize anything there, and Trump doesn't see a problem with that if he can make a deal. This clip is from Trump's speech in Saudi Arabia. It's spreading like wildfire on Arabic social media. Now, what he says is a rebuke to Republicans like me, the conservatives that have, been thinking about, hey, look, we might need to intervene somewhere when something goes bad. He is not taking that course. Listen to what he's saying, but the Saudis are liking it.
Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that.
And so far, I'm okay with everything that Trump said. That's good.
And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here.
So that's good. He's praising the people in the region for developing things on their own and that sort of thing. He's also slapping at neocons who were intervening in Iraq and that sort of thing. I understand that.
For all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it.
Yeah, here he's rebuking the Bush administration, particularly for the way that Republicans acted then, which is kind of what most people in Ukraine wish that they would be doing right now, helping Ukraine push off Russia. Okay. At any rate, U.S. President Donald Trump went then from there, and Trump's handshake with a former rebel who is now Syria's interim president. Oh, Putin has to be hating this. So Putin kind of had Russia's thumb on Syria through Assad, and this is a diplomatic reset that few thought was possible. But again, it's a reset with not just the U.S., but with Saudi's kind of presence as well. And Saudi is not Iran, and they hate each other. And yeah, a new chapter in Syrian history. Donald Trump met with transitional president of Syria, the long-suffering Syria, after years of tyranny and civil war, has finally been given a chance for a peaceful and prosperous life. This is Carolyn Levitt, the White House press secretary, saying today President Trump, at the invitation of Crown Prince MBS, met with Syrian President and President Erdogan of Turkey joined in on the phone call. President Erdogan praised President Trump for lifting sanctions on Syria and committing to working alongside Saudi. So the region has shifted. When I say that Putin will absolutely hate these shifts, he's going to absolutely hate these shifts. He's lost massive power in the Middle East. Okay. So it's a decisive power shift, and let's just move on to the next thing. So the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is delighted, greeting, with watching Trump's speech, and then he, being Trump, goes to Qatar. You're the first American president to officially visit Qatar, and so we're very honored, says the emir. And the President Trump announces that he's made this huge deal while he's there. Trump signed an economic cooperation agreement with Qatar worth over 1 trillion US dollars, according to the White House. Now, I'm not a great fan of this kind of thing. I'll explain what the deal is, and then I'll explain why I'm not a great fan. It was also revealed that Qatar struck a deal with Boeing to supply 160 aircraft worth $200 billion for the national air carrier Qatar Airways. Boeing CEO stated that this is the largest aircraft order in the company's history. Okay, but what the president should be doing is creating conditions so that deals can be made, not going to make a deal with this country or that country. Like he's supposed to be making the economy desirable for these trade deals to be made. So it's kind of misunderstanding the role of the president, but he's going to run a victory lap for that. And okay, let him run a victory lap. If these trade deals open up the region and make it less tense for, bombings and war and things in the Middle East and keep the Russians at bay, I mean, it's a good day. All right. Trump then was talking about his, getting his jet. When you land and you see Saudi Arabia, you see UAE, and you see Qatar, and they have these brand new 747s mostly. You see ours next to it, and it's like a totally different plane. It's much smaller and less impressive. I believe we should have the most impressive plane. My attitude is, why wouldn't I accept a gift? Okay, this is boneheaded. The idea that you can accept a $400 million plane from Qatar and it doesn't look like it stinks, like the deal is going to be some kind of quid pro quo of some sort. You shouldn't be accepting that as the president of the United States from another nation. All right. The U.S. opposes inviting President Zelenskyy, and this is another bad thing as well. The U.S. opposes inviting President Zelenskyy into NATO summit at The Hague on 24 June, with invitations currently extended only to Asian partners Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. No NATO Ukraine leaders council is planned for now, and though a ministerial level meeting might take place there, that's terrible. If you want to increase pressure, if you want to get Putin to the table, you should be like, hey, I'm going to run down the clock. And if you haven't made a deal by the time they're in NATO, they're in. That should be your approach. But that's just my estimation, and nobody's listening to me. All right, my friends, last thing by Darth Putin. 1 month ago today, we killed 34 civilians attending an Easter church service on Sumi because we defend Christian values. You have imposed no meaningful consequences upon us. This means that you permit it. That's the way Putin has been thinking about it, but these shifts are going to take away his power very subtly. Putin will absolutely hate the shifts that just took place in the world order. Tell me what you think about that in the comments below. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.